Welcome to Life Alchemized, where science meets inner transformation. I'm your host, Natasha, a leadership coach and psychologist. Evolution is one of the great transformation stories. Not a quick transformation, not the kind where everything changes after one dramatic moment, one clean decision, one cinematic thunderclap. Evolution is slower than that and stranger than that. It's more patient. It works in the deep time of bones, cells, instincts, environments, pressures, mistakes, survival, chance, and adaptation. Evolution does not ask what is perfect, it asks what can continue. That question is important because when we hear the word evolution, many of us think fossils and finches and survival and biology textbooks. We think of ancient oceans and early mammals, opposable thumbs, and the long road from single celled life to human beings sitting in traffic while holding coffee and experiencing existential dread. But evolution is not only something that happened behind us, it is happening through us, in our bodies, in our brains, in our behaviors, in our cultures, in the small decisions that shape who we become. The alchemy of evolution is the movement from what was useful then to what is possible now. It's the art of adaptation, the story of how life changes in order to keep living. Evolution, at its most basic, is change over time. In biology, evolution refers to changes in inherited traits across generations. Through processes like natural selection, mutation, genetic drift, and adaptation, life shifts in response to environment and pressure. Charles Darwin gave us one of the most powerful scientific frameworks for understanding this. In On the Origin of Species, Darwin described a world where life is not fixed, but branching, adapting, and becoming. He famously ended the book with the phrase, "endless forms most beautiful and most wonderful." That is evolution's poetry. Life does not stay still. It experiments, it branches, it responds, it keeps becoming. But evolution is not a straight ladder from simple to superior. That is a really common misunderstanding. Evolution is more like a wild ancient forest. Branches grow in different directions. Some survive, some end. Some adapt beautifully to one environment and terribly to another. Some traits are useful in one season and costly in the next. So evolution is not perfection. Evolution is fit between organism and environment. A trait is adaptive when it helps an organism survive or reproduce in a particular environment. But if the environment changes, yesterday's advantage can become today's complication. And this is where evolution becomes deeply personal. Because many of our human behaviors make more sense when we remember that our brains and bodies evolved for environments very different from the ones we live in now. We carry ancient wiring into modern rooms. We have nervous systems shaped by danger, belonging, scarcity, status, attachment, competition, and survival. Then we place those nervous systems into email, deadlines, social media, performance reviews, dating apps, grocery stores with 47 kinds of cereal, and news cycles that deliver the world's suffering into our hands before breakfast. So no wonder being human is complicated. We're layered. Evolutionary psychology explores this layering. It asks how human thoughts, emotions, and behaviors may have been shaped by adaptive challenges faced by our ancestors. Why do we scan for danger? Why does rejection hurt? Why do we compare ourselves? And why do we bond, protect, fear, desire, grieve, and defend? The answers are not simple. Human behavior is shaped by biology, culture, personality, learning, development, and choice. Evolution is context. Fear, for example, is a survival system. Your ancestors who noticed threats quickly were more likely to survive than the ones who said, "I'm sure that rustling in the bushes is nothing," and then became a cautionary tale with teeth marks. So we inherited a brain that can be very good at detecting threat. The problem is that the modern brain sometimes treats an email like a tiger. The body prepares for danger. The heart rate shifts, the muscles tighten, attention narrows, and the nervous system says, we may need to fight, flee, freeze, or appease. And intellectually, we may know we're not going to be eaten during the 2 p.m. meeting, probably, but the body does not only respond to facts, it responds to perceived threat. And this is the evolutionary mismatch. A system built for survival in one kind of world now has to function in another. We see this everywhere. Our desire for sugar and fat made sense in environments where calories were scarce. In a world of ultra-processed abundance, that same drive can work against our health. Our sensitivity to belonging helped us survive in small groups where exclusion could be dangerous. In a world of online comparison, it can become chronic anxiety. Our attention to negative information helped us avoid danger. In a world of nonstop alerts, it can become doom scrolling. And our need for status helped us navigate hierarchy and group survival. In modern workplaces, it can become overwork, imposter syndrome, or the tiny internal courtroom where we prosecute ourselves for not being exceptional enough by Tuesday. Evolution helps us see ourselves with more compassion. Compassion says, this response came from somewhere. Then wisdom asks, is it still serving me? The alchemy is us taking inherited reactions, learned habits, old defensive and survival strategies, and we place them into the vessel of awareness. We study them. We ask what they protected. We ask what they cost. We ask what must now evolve. Alchemy, historically and symbolically, is the art of transformation. Alchemists worked with matter, vessels, heat, separation. The famous dream was turning lead into gold. But psychologically, alchemy offers a language for inner transformation. Something raw enters the vessel. Something is heated. Something breaks down. Something is refined. And then something new emerges. Evolution works this way too, but across time and life. Pressure meets form. Form adapts. What cannot adapt must fall away, and what can adapt carries forward. Personal evolution follows a really similar pattern. First, there's pressure, a life transition, a repeated conflict, a health scare, a loss, a truth we can no longer unknow, a behavior that once protected us that now limits us. This is the alchemical heat. Then comes disillusion. The old identity begins to loosen. I am not who I thought I was. This strategy is not working anymore. This environment no longer fits me. This belief was inherited, not chosen. Disillusion is interesting because while necessary, it can feel really destabilizing. But that often means, like so many things, that it's the beginning of growth. The old form has to soften before a new form can emerge. Then comes separation. We sort what to keep from what to release. And this is crucial. Evolution does not mean rejecting everything we used to be. Some old adaptations still matter. Some instincts are wise. Some habits protect our values. And some identities deserve to come with us. But other things may need to change. The people-pleasing that once kept you safe may now keep you silent. The perfectionism that once earned approval may now block creativity. So evolution asks, what still belongs? Then comes recombination. We build a new way, not from nothing, but from what remains, from what we have learned, from the old strengths and the new truths. And this is where neuroscience gives us hope. The brain is not fixed. Neuroplasticity refers to the nervous system's ability to change in response to experience, learning, and environment. That does not mean change is easy, as we all know. It does not mean that we can think one inspirational thought and become completely different by lunchtime, but it does mean that the brain can adapt. This is the personal version of evolution, not genetic change across generations, but nervous system change across practice. The brain becomes what it repeatedly does. And that is thrilling and mildly inconvenient because it means our repeated reactions are also training. Every time we avoid a hard conversation, we train avoidance. Every time we pause and speak truthfully, we train courage. Every time we numb instead of feel, we train disconnection. Every time we name what is happening and stay present, we train capacity. Evolution is not only dramatic transformation, it's repetition under pressure. This is why personal evolution often feels less like becoming a butterfly and more like becoming a slightly more emotionally regulated mammal with a planner and better boundaries. Now let's talk about behavior. One of the most helpful things we can remember is that behavior has a history. Your reactions do not appear out of nowhere. They come from temperament and biology, family systems, culture, reward, punishment, trauma, success, observation, and repetition. At some point, many behaviors made sense. The question is whether they still make sense. That question turns judgment into inquiry. Inquiry is alchemical. It changes the material. When we understand a behavior, we gain more freedom with it. We can say, "Thank you for trying to protect me, but we're not in that same place anymore." That is evolution. There is a famous quote often attributed to Carl Jung: "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What remains unseen tends to run the show. Evolution requires awareness. Now, before we close, let's bring in Marty Jobson's book, The Science of Being Human: Why We Behave, Think, and Feel the Way We Do. This book is a strong companion for this episode because it approaches human beings with scientific curiosity. It asks the kinds of questions many of us quietly carry. Why do we behave this way? Why do we feel what we feel? Why do our minds work the way that they do? Why are humans so brilliant and strange, social, emotional, contradictory, and occasionally ridiculous? What makes a book like this useful is that it reminds us that being human is not random. Our thoughts, feelings, bodies, and behaviors have roots. Some roots are evolutionary, some are biological, some are neurological, some are social, and some are shaped by experience. When we understand more about why humans behave, think, and feel the way they do, we can also meet ourselves with less shame and more skill. We can stop treating every reaction as a personal failure and start seeing it as information. We can become curious about the systems beneath the surface. We're not trying to escape being human. We're trying to become more conscious humans. Because the great work is not becoming someone entirely new. The great work is becoming more aware, more adaptive, more integrated, and more alive. Evolution brought us here. Alchemy asks what we will become next. Thank you for listening to Life Alchemized. If something here resonated, let it settle before you rush forward. Awareness is already movement.